is always.
Alexa, start.
Best.
So here's where we are right now. I'm Ian Bailey Harris. This is Conversations with White People. We just started with the fish under the sea, the Little Mermaid in the background right now. We got PA, Pound for Pound, one of the best hip hop groups of all time. Stop. So, what's happened recently is we've seen a lot of global protest about a black woman, black young woman, black woman being cast as Ariel in The Little Mermaid. I think it's Halle Bailey. By the way, that's my son's name. But she's been cast, and the dissent, the opposition, the worldwide clamor is that's unacceptable. Well, who is it unacceptable to? Not unacceptable to me. Not, is it unacceptable to you, Sophia, that a black woman is being cast as the Little Mermaid?
Not at all.
Not at all. Right? So it's unacceptable to a lot of the members of the white mass power culture. And I mean, they're twisted about this. They're gonzo about this. They're on message boards, they're on Facebook, they're on YouTube, they're starting petitions, they're going to boycott Disney. They're going to show the world that they really need to stand up for the blonde. No, was it Ariel's hair was red-haired, green-eyed Ariel. And so we're gonna examine some of this stuff. The whole concept of mermaids in the first place. The whole concept of mermaids we see as part of indigenous culture, right? So mermaids didn't just pop up on Disney all of a sudden. All of a sudden they're singing under the sea and They're all of a sudden they have the privilege to walk on two legs and do whatever they want to. Even before that, we have Hans Christian Andersen in 1937, penning this really macabre, twisted story about the Little Mermaid. But centuries and centuries and thousands of years before that, you had Mami Wata, who was an African mermaid deity who was looked upon with, she was so beautiful that she would hypnotize people, and her jewelry would be shining and gleaming, and African and indigenous cultures from not just Mami Wata but other indigenous cultures for thousands of years worship them, and not just the thing about worship is that the things that you worship have a personality, right? And so they were given personality. They were given, if you will, something that you could hold on to. They were given a culture. They were given society. There was rules. So it's not just a picture sitting up there on the wall like we worship white Jesus or something. It was part of their everyday lives. They would speak to her. They would see her in all the various forms of things that were important in their lives. This is thousands of years. Let's fast forward a little bit, right? The Hans Christian Andersen in 1937, out of Denmark. And he flipped this tale. Again, we know that indigenous people talked about mer people. We also know that sailors, European, Scandinavian sailors, used to mythologize catastrophes, negative events, and they would talk about images that they saw in the water, mermen and merwomen, and we can see that those images were primarily negative and were about things that happened to them in order for them to, I guess, deal with it, to be able to rationalize why a ship would sink. But there was no daily worship. The sailors were maybe worried. These were alien things. Those were things that they when their children were sick, they didn't sit there and worship these deities or make them part of their lives. They were an alien thing onto them. So then enter Hans Christian Andersen, beautiful warm day out today too as well. And in 1937, he started to write about, he wrote a story called The Little Mermaid. Now, we've done this thing in North America with Disney, where we take these fairy tales and we make them into nice, sweet, innocent things, and we can sing Under the Sea or I'm on my own or whatever. It's a whole new world. They make it into these sweet little stories, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that's about later. But these earlier fairy tales, whether it's the Grimm brothers, whether it's Hans Christian Andersen, they weren't really nice stories. The Little Mermaid went something a little bit like this, is that the Little Mermaid one day through a storm went up to the surface. She wasn't supposed to. She'd been rebelling against her father because he was recently widowed. I don't know how that works. And she saw this gleaming, shining white prince and fell in love. And then came back down, and the way that Hans Christian Andersen tells it is, again, this is, we're already entering into full misogyny. The way that Hans Christian Andersen tells it is that a witch, again, let's vilify all forms of worship and women that are involved in them. So what Hans Christian Andersen does is he writes that this witch gave her a potion that said, okay, it's going to give you the power to walk on two legs. But when you walk on these legs, it's going to feel like knives are driving into your feet. Horrible. And it's going to be painful. You're going to have a great deal of agony. And if you don't find true love, by the next morning and marry this guy, or next day, I can't remember the time period, then what's going to happen is you're going to turn into foam and die, right? I don't know why this witch would say that, but that's the way Hans Christian Andersen wrote it. Wonderful story. A woman's life depends on her falling in love with a shining prince, right? Misogyny reaffirmed. So what happens is the prince, like men are, he hangs out with her, she's dancing, he falls in love with her, she falls in love with him, but that's not good enough for him, so he goes off and marries a princess from another kingdom. Wonderful. As a result, she gets very depressed, and for some reason, there's another storm again, and during the storm, she's told by one of her sisters, here's a knife. If you kill him and the blood drips on your feet, then you'll be safe. But for some reason, she can't do it, goes off the sea and turns into foam. And then some magic space Jesus comes in and says to her, because of pure love, and your pure love, you are now made into a space angel, and one day you may get a soul or something. That's how twisted some of these early stories are. Like, it's totally misogynistic, it's insulting, it's just horrible, but it's twisted, and it's all about pain and suffering for women if they don't do what men tell them to do, or what they fall into some sort of twisted gender role, right? So that's Hans Christian Andersen, and that sort of leads us up to Disney, which Disney has taken, Alice in Wonderland, and Through the Looking Glass, and what Alice saw there, and the rest of Grimm's tales, and taking them from meaning something else into something that children would watch and be programmed by. Right? So when we enter Disney, we've seen, what is it? Disney's been around since the 1930s, so we're really looking at almost 100 years of them telling this cartoon stuff. And it's interesting that, well, it's not interesting, it's just sinister and racist as hell that Disney really, up until Tiana, is it Tiana? Isn't that the frog? The Princess and the Frog? Which is a true story about a black woman, so to speak, except for turning into a frog. It's just how white people treat black women. But up until Tiana was featured, we really only saw black people pictured as Sunflower in Fantasia. I think it was 1934, and they didn't give her any clothes, and she was there to do the other centaurs, the white women's centaurs, the white women. She was there to adhere to the white women, to polish their nails and file their toes and do their hair. So we see the centaur, this what they would call a pickaninny, right? You've seen this in early movie lore. Not intelligent, diverse black women, but a black woman whose only purpose is there to serve white people. And so that's what Sunflower is there for. And then imagine this, black girls, black women had to wait 70 years of some of the most racist bullshit, Song of the South, watching these white princesses get whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, and being entitled to the whole entire universe just because I'm me and I deserve it, right? So and you I'm going to challenge anybody to find me a time when a black woman or a black girl even complained publicly about this. They just sat silently suffering and in their own imaginations placing themselves in these stories instead of white women. They had to do it mentally. And this is a testimony to the imagination of black women, which have necessitated almost every single major convenience and invention we have. It was sort of their imaginations that's allowed North America and the world to live as we have, right? But 70 years of this stuff until Tiana. And so now we have white people talking, white women primarily, it's fueled by patriarchy. We know that white men are behind this. You know that we use black men, white women, and white men in order to further the hatred and mistreatment of black women. So, do we have any questions so far, Sophia? No questions from anybody, but that's cool. All right. So, Annalisa writes, white people truly believe that Hans wrote mermaids into existence. They do not see him as someone who heard of other stories and wrote a fan fiction, but as a creator because they were white people. And that's a great point. Mermaids weren't created by Hans Christian Andersen. This whole concept of white innovation is a myth. It's usually black innovation and white capitalization. So Annalisa makes a great point, is that Hans Christian Andersen isn't the originator of any of this. Emily writes, hi, I see. I like what you were talking about here. People are so racist. I can't wait to see the Little Mermaid. With Halle Bailey, right? Wonderful. Fantastic. So there's 70 years of this stuff, and let me sort of pause